Cherian, how do you stand on destination weddings? Is it good business and bad ecology? Where do we draw the line and how do we keep that balance?
Meghna, as Matya just spoke, the business of weddings itself has grown and exploded in the last 10, 15 years with that brief interregnum of COVID. Two, enormously advantageous to destinations that are chosen because there are lots of people who come in the wake of a wedding who want to be going where a couple who they have seen, eulogized about, go.
Absolutely.
I think that, a wedding with 200 guests is, as by Indian terms at least, puny. It isn't even something worth considering as a major source of pollution or anything. Right. Of course, they'll be accompanied by their security and things. My sense is that Venice probably needs to move up the market as far as this kind of wedding is concerned. It is the direction to go. The direction it needs to curb is the vast sea of people who come and don't actually spend too much money in the city and flood it coming off cruise ships. Because, like any business, this is what I call overexploitation of the beauty of a city. So I think that if Venice is smart and if it is concerned about ecology, it will probably allow events like this to happen and gradually choke off the extra large cruise ships, because those are the people who probably pay less attention to the sensitive ecology of a fragile ecosystem like Venice is. Each time I've gone to Venice, I've been terrified that will you be able to come back to this city in its current form? And that, I think, much like Bhutan has actually blocked off the kind of traveler who tends to be unsensitive to the ecology or the culture of the place. So also, I think Venice needs to understand that lovers of art, lovers of architecture, I'm not trying to create a class distinction here. All I'm saying is that you need to be more picky and choosy who you actually exploit in economic terms.
That's very interesting. Dilip, that's very interesting that you are saying that. In fact, Mataya, that's exactly what Venice has done, hasn't it? After all, it's got a one-day fee which needs to be paid for anyone who wants to spend even a day. It's like a day pass that you need to pay for. Has that worked? Have other cities also done it? For example, we know that Vatican has it, Venice has started, but there are similar demands which were coming in Rome, if I'm not mistaken, last year at least. I'm not sure if they've imposed it yet.
No, they haven't yet, but it is absolutely true that this model is sort of, Venice was sort of at the forefront of it. It is working so far in terms of sort of helping the city to make it sustainable and also to discourage that, as Dilip was saying, the type of tourism that is mostly a very, very short and not particularly respectful of the place, of the landscape, of the culture, and you want to have less of that type of tourism, mass tourism based on one-day trips, staying in places nearby, and more moving to the model like that. For sure, having a fee, creating a sort of barrier helps, and I think Venice has been successful in sort of enforcing that. And I would agree with the point that was made before me for how not nice it may sound. I think the only way for Venice to go about this is to really be selective of the type of tourism that you may want to target.
Right.
And in my view, Bezos is exactly the type of tourism. It's like super top-notch billionaires willing to pay, and to pay also to clean after them, like not leaving not a small trace on the environment.
Yes. That's a very important point that you've raised. It's not just about coming here for tourism. When you leave, how will you leave it? And Dilip, here's where I want you to come, because in India, as we all know, there are several destination wedding has become this booming business in India as well. But is this the time for us to already start re-evaluating? What about the checks and balances? What happens, for example, even when it comes to stadiums, you have these big events, stadiums are left in a mess. You have your tourists, you have your sports persons who come out and say, you cannot go around ruining our stadiums. Similarly, you have specific destination weddings across in Rajasthan, down south as well, which have become hubs for wedding tourism. Should the authorities now look at Venice and now decide what needs to be done to have that sustainable balance as well?
You know, I'm glad that, Mattia raised that point about sustainability. From the point of view of the resident of Venice. Now, first we've got to understand that Venice is a world city. It is an asset to the world. The
Yes.
people who live there are privileged to live there, and we obviously need to look after their interests. But the Bezos wedding, for example, has ensured that 80% of the spend is going to vendors based in Venice. And I think that's a fabulous thing. You know, that's the kind of thing that they should be doing. But in addition, I need to also highlight that just as you asked about the Indian destination weddings, we are actually ruining many of these weddings. And in some cases, though, the fact that prices are pitched so high already makes it semi-exclusive. But the destruction and the inability to clean up after, as they say,
Absolutely.
tread gently, tread softly, because you don't know what you're crushing. So I think you need to make sure that you provide livelihoods and provide opportunities for locals to live off that, but you've got to compress the scale and not
Absolutely.
allow big to become bold and just brassy.
Well, you're absolutely right, which is why we are having these conversations today, because look at what's happening in Venice. That could happen and already is happening to many places in India as well. Complaints which have been coming in for Goa, for example, in Udaipur as well. These are cities which have been known for destination weddings. But what happens after the wedding? Well, that's what we need to ensure is going to be a series and rules and regulations when it comes to cleanup, when it comes to crowd control, when it comes to sustainability of the ecology as well. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mattia Ferraresi, as well as Dilip Cherian, for joining us with your views and opinions on this. Without a short break, but hopefully this is going to let you think. Destination wedding, yes, it's a great idea, but exotic wedding should not be exploitative, perhaps. See you.